representatives who have actually challenged the character of the Dayton Peace Accords, and instead of interpreting it in line. Paddy Ashdown was criminal and unjust. He's telling things that are not true. He's saying, things expecting to be patted on his shoulders from Sarajevo. Valentin Inzko, the High Representative, is saying and has said before things on the basis of which we conclude that he hates Serbs. He's either paid for saying those things or he's quite convinced that's right. I'm saying this is speaking on behalf of one people in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Bosniak people, Muslims. You're not the person to interpret what the presidency should be doing. I'm there to do that, not you lying here before this high body. There is a lot of evidence showing that the High Representative and OHR have imposed decisions of the Constitutional Court. Please stop this monster who's trying to impose solutions yet again, contrary to the Dayton. Because Inzko.
I have now listened to a very long monologue full of personal attacks against the High Representative. Let me just say, and I'm sure that many will share that, I do not think that this is how the Security Council should be discussing. First one, our commitment is important, having heard what I just heard. We thank the High Representative for his work on the ground in creating peace and supporting reconciliation. We maintain our full support to you and to your office. We welcome the work of the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina and its international judges. We believe verbal attacks and defamatory language against the court and its judges must not be tolerated. The Peace Implementation Council Steering Board and the Security Council have repeatedly expressed their commitment to Bosnia and Herzegovina's territorial integrity and to its structure as a single and sovereign state. We stand by this commitment. Against the backdrop of today's list of briefers and against the backdrop of how this discussion has been going so far, we would like to stress the importance of cooperation with elected government representatives. Now, we are very concerned about the divisive, negative rhetoric that deepens existing divisions and that makes reconciliation in Bosnia and Herzegovina increasingly difficult. And I think we have just seen some of that. This year, we solemnly commemorated the 25th anniversary of the genocide in Srebrenica. It is unacceptable that convicted war criminals are glorified. The reform of the election law is an urgent issue, in particular with regard to the implementation of the Sejdic-Finci ruling of the European Court of Human Rights. It is high time that all citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina can equally take part in political life of the country. Please allow me to end by asking a question to Mr. Dodik. I don't know whether he is still with us, but the question is what you will do in order to end glorification of convicted war criminals in the Republika Srpska.
China respects the independence, unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
We fully support the work of the Office of High Representative and we condemn all personal attacks on Mr. Inzko. It is disappointing to learn that divisive rhetoric and frequent actions targeting the country's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and even its constitution have continued. Spreading nationalist and provocative rhetoric, denying war crimes or glorifying convicted war criminals is not in line with the country's Euro-Atlantic perspective. Finally, a question. How does the opening of the student dormitory in Pale near Sarajevo in honor of convicted war criminal Radovan Karadzic or paying respect to the convicted war criminal Momcilo Krajnic fit in with the country's Euro-Atlantic perspectives and the spirit of the Dayton Agreement?
It is unfortunate that today's discussion was not conceived and structured in a way that allowed for all stakeholders' voices to be heard and incorporated. I heard your Bosniak participation and inclusion in political dialogues is essential, we believe, for a stable and prosperous future for the country. Given the remarks that we just heard from one of the speakers for 30 minutes, I feel it's important to state that the United States strongly supports the Office of the High Representative and High Representative Insko. The designation of the High Representative was a key component of the Dayton Accords. The Office of the High Representative's role in overseeing the implementation of civilian aspects of the Accord remains indispensable and necessary.
Deploring, obviously, the personal attacks against the High Representative. We fully support the High Representative as a key component of the Dayton Accords. We also regret that the 3 members of the presidency of Bosnia-Herzegovina, who are the highest democratically elected representative of the citizens in the country, have not been able to brief us alongside with our briefers today. We should here be aiming at strengthening the institution of Bosnia-Herzegovina, not weakening them. France is, like others, concerned that some political leaders in Bosnia-Herzegovina glorified convicted war criminals on a regular basis. We believe this must stop.
It is also regrettable that the Russian Federation here today have not taken the opportunity to focus on strengthening Bosnia and Herzegovina by inviting its highest elected representatives, but instead have chosen to use this area format as a platform for division rather than unity on this anniversary. By inviting leaders of political parties rather than all 3 members of the tripartite presidency, our Russian colleagues have focused on a divisive discussion along ethnic and territorial lines, as we have all just heard. I would like to make clear that the UK fully supports the work of the High Representative and his team. As others have said, we deplore the personal attacks on him heard today. It is not acceptable that governments are still not fully formed 2 years after elections, and nor is it acceptable to reject those who have been elected legally and in line with the Constitution based on. It is therefore sad to see some leaders at first accepting this dark piece of history, but then changing their narrative to deny the Srebrenica genocide for political reasons. I would like to conclude by calling once again for an end to the glorification of convicted war criminals.
Let me first reiterate Belgium's full support to the High Representative, Mr. Insko, and his office. As such, we deplore the personal attacks of the briefers on the High Representative. We also regret that the request for a more balanced approach in the choice of the briefers has not been taken on board, and that not all the 3 members of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina. No reconciliation is possible without sincere recognition of the crimes committed during the war, including the Srebrenica genocide 25 years ago. Revision or denial of war crimes and the glorification of war criminals undermine this process. The adoption of a law penalizing the denial of genocide and war crimes qualified as such by international justice could help prevent such actions.
Of institutions, primarily at the entity level and lately also at the state level. There are reports of systemic discrimination of the so-called others. We pay homage to those who lost their lives during the genocide. We must resist attempts to glorify war criminals.
Thank you, Vasily. Thanks for organizing this meeting. If ever we needed a recent reminder how important it is that the international community stays fully involved in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it was this meeting. And if ever we needed to be reminded of a clear and unequivocal reason why we need Valentin Insko as our High Representative in Bosnia and Herzegovina, why we need to support fully the OHR, and why we must express our lasting gratitude to Valentin's many efforts in difficult circumstances, then it was this meeting. Annex 10 is a vital component of the Dayton Agreement. Support to the agreement includes support to the High Representative in the implementation of his mandate. Again and again, we are faced with instances of denial or even glorification of war crimes, sometimes undertaken or backed by holders of political offices. This is not acceptable.
We share the view of other delegations that a more institutional panel of briefers, as well as a representation of civil society, the High Representative, whose mandate and office we continue to support.
Point. Let me echo many of my colleagues regretting the personal attack on the High Representative. Let me also express gratitude to High Representative Insko.
At the outset, just in relation to the series of negative attacks on the High Representative, to emphasise Ireland's strong support both for the Office of the High Representative and for HR Insko's work, like others, that it wasn't possible to have the necessary balance for the commemoration that the presence of the three members of the collegial presidency would have provided. Mr. Chair, this year, of course, also marks the 25th anniversary of the genocide at Srebrenica, a shameful episode in modern European history, the memory of which can never be eradicated. No place in the modern Bosnia-Herzegovina for the glorification of war criminals and the denial of genocide.